Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of the Payne and Drain Show. Checking in between preseason week 1 and week 2, a little mid-camp kind of update podcast for us here. My name is Zach Payne. I'm one half of this show. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Alex Drain. Alex, as we sit here, we're a couple weeks into camp. We're still a couple weeks out from the season. How are we doing? Lots happened since the last time we talked, and it feels like we're at the point of the season where I hope you enjoyed the offseason because now it's just go, go, go.
Yeah, starting to heat up a little bit. We had the first preseason game. It's still farther away, I think, than you would like to the actual action. Yeah, this weekend I think was 3 weeks to college football, so that would be 4 weeks to the NFL season. Kind of good though from the Lions because of an injury that occurred. We'll get into that, but it was one of those things that when you heard the news, you were like, "Oh man, the 8 to 10 weeks, that's bad." And then you're like, "Wait a second, season doesn't even start for like more than a month." So, and it's just that bittersweet sort of thing. It's still a long way away, but obviously more things are happening and certainly more to discuss today.
Absolutely, and we do have a lot to cover today. We have a lot of camp battles and some camp stars and the guys that are showing out, some guys that are slipping on the roster a little bit. Obviously, we'll talk about the preseason game against the Bengals as well and we'll talk a little bit about what to expect the preseason game against the Commanders on Saturday with some of the starters playing. But before we get into some of that more exciting stuff, we have some housekeeping stuff to take care of as well. Starting with one, I guess, semi-surprising storyline, which is that the Lions' backup quarterback is different than it was the last time we talked 2 weeks ago because Teddy Bridgewater, for the second time in 3 years, has retired from the Lions and has promptly been replaced by Josh Dobbs, who will be the QB2. I'd be very surprised if Luke Altmaier usurped him on the depth chart, but obviously with the first preseason game, Dobbs still learning the system and whatnot. But just kind of immediate reaction. How surprised were you that Bridgewater was calling it quits on the career, and what do we think of Dobbs coming in?
I mean, it was surprising in the sense of he had been retired, and that I guess we can't be ultra surprised when we just had a very similar Grandpa Simpson situation with Frank Ragnow walking in, taking the coat off, putting it on the rack, putting it back on, and walking right out. Like we already had the rug pulled out from under us once, but this one doesn't seem to be health related. It just sounded like he felt he couldn't do it to the ability that he wanted to, or something like that.
I
That was
think it
one of the
might have been a
quotes I read.
little like injury, like maybe he wasn't like I know he got dinged up to start camp, and it was like maybe he just was his body wasn't responding the way he wanted to anymore, and I don't know, his body's breaking down on him a little bit for his career. Is what it is. Calls it quits. Not much
Yeah,
like
I
is what
mean,
it is.
I just would have figured that if he was coming out of retirement, he would have felt solid enough about it to see the season out. But at the end of the day, not the most eventful thing, as we've known. If there is a significant Jared Goff injury, that's kind of it. So who the backups are not that relevant. What I will say is that Josh Dobbs is plausibly a guy that could win a game against, a not very good opponent. If you need him to come in and play one game, like if he could he beat the New Orleans Saints week 1? Probably, maybe. Like we saw him play for the Vikings. Was that 3 years ago? Was that 23 when Cousins went down? Then he stepped in.
Might
But
have
he
been
had
because
that
he was acquired from the
the
Cardinals,
Cardinals, right?
because he played under Drew Petzing, and there's the link there, and then he was traded to the Vikings, and it was the most infuriating time to watch Vikings games as a Lions fan because it was like, just stop the Josh Dobbs scramble,
It was
for the
all
love of
scrambling,
God.
but it was a fun little insanity run there for him. I've always been on the record in saying I like when backup QBs are runners because it just gives them something that they can do. And he's a veteran. He's also apparently very smart and educated. He was like a rocket scientist or something like that. It was his
Wait,
undergrad
whoa, whoa,
degree.
wait, whoa! We've been down this path before. I don't know if I want a keep the rocket scientists away from this team.
That's the backstory, right? Like he was like a like a
I'm not
physics
sure. I'd have
major or
to check.
something. I thought I saw something about that, but he's known as like a good preparation guy, just smart overall. And we hear a lot about quarterbacks and the importance of helping the starter prepare as a key part of the backup role, and I think he should be able to do that well, assuming he makes the roster.
He is indeed a aerospace engineer, 4.0 from the University of Tennessee, and he worked with NASA a little bit. So
There you
he is
go. As
so
long
he
as
is a
as
smart
long as
guy.
the camera doesn't pan over and he's got a pencil over his ear, then
You
that's
should
when it
be
will have
okay.
gone too far.
He also does not look like he has also eaten a rocket scientist, so that's probably something that's playing in his favor as well. I will say just on the backup battle, and we'll talk about Altmaier and his performance in the preseason in a little bit, but it the upgrade from Kyle Allen and Hendon Hooker last year to Josh Dobbs and Luke Altmaier this year cannot be overstated. Like the Lions' backup situation is infinitely in a better place than it was 12 months ago.
Without a doubt. Like that the just the juxtaposition of the Hall of Fame game from last year versus that Bengals game, so much more watchable. And a lot of that comes down to like, do you have a quarterback who can get the ball like in the vicinity of the receivers?
Exactly. So, and yeah, we'll talk about Allmeyer in a second. We also had a fairly notable signing at linebacker as the Lions brought in Devin White on a 1 year kind of mercenary style contract where I, Devin White, I mean, it's not what was he the like fifth or fourth overall pick? Like he's not that Devin White anymore, but he has played a lot in the NFL. He's been among the tackle leaders with the Raiders the last couple of years, and that's not necessarily a indicator of positive success. But as like if you look at the tackle indicators, it's a bunch of guys that played on bad defenses, including Jack Campbell, who played on a very interesting unit last year, but racked up a whole bunch of tackles. It is just more competition for that will spot and some of those when the Lions shift down to those two linebacker sets, he can move around. He's a little bit like he's very physical in the run game, maybe not as good on special teams, but we talked last year, the whole thing was the linebackers deepest position on the roster. Coming into this year was like, it's maybe taking a hit now that Anzalone's gone. With Devin White in the building now, seems like we're getting back to a fairly deep linebacker group, even if it is a bit one note.
Yeah, and I don't remember if the Jimmy Rolder injury had happened the last time we talked or not,
Oh
but
yeah.
that was another factor that played into the need just to get another body at linebacker. And Devin White, definitely one of those guys that had some really good years in there when the Bucks were competing for Super Bowls when they had Tom Brady. And I mean, like, I remember back when he was coming out of college, like a lot of debates with people I knew in college over like what who the Lions should pick in that 2019 draft. They end up taking Hawkinson, and there were a lot of people that were hoping Devin White would fall. And for a while there, it seemed like that would have been a great thing if it had happened, but. I'm not sure exactly what the cause of his fall off was in Tampa Bay. I think I heard, like, I saw some people referencing like maybe issues with commitment to football or things of that nature. But he fell off from a pretty high perch pretty quickly. But he was still in the league last year, and at the very least, it seems like that could be a backup of some kind. Like, and has some pedigree, so I don't hate it. And the early reports have been reasonably positive. I mean, it certainly seems like he's in the competition to get a backup spot. So anytime you can add a guy like that, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah. And I mean, it's also like his best work came when he was playing next to Levante David, which is fair. Jack Campbell's pretty good. He's not Levante David, but he's still a very good linebacker. So maybe just play like maybe it's that when you're playing next to good players, like the rising tide lifts all ships kind of thing. It's what we've talked about with the guard play with Penei Sewell, where it's like, well, you play next to Penei Sewell, and or back when Ragnow was here, you play in between Sewell and Ragnow, you're gonna look pretty good. It's a lot easier to make plays when you have those good players around you as well. So that could be a factor, but seems like there's a reasonable expectation that the linebacker room should be dialed against the run between Barnes and Campbell and White and Rodrigo. Those are all good run defenders. Coverage TBD. And White is another guy that's like, he's not really great in coverage, but and we've also talked like what linebackers are like aside from Fred Warner, like are excellent in coverage. Like it's hard to find like really really good coverage linebackers. So maybe to an extent you kind of just have to take what you get.
Yeah, I mean, linebackers that are really good in coverage are so rare, and you're just trying to find someone that can fill in and play some snaps and, give you competition down there and push Derek Barnes at the very least. So I got no issue with White joining the mix.
Yeah, and so you mentioned the roller injury. That one's unfortunate because if not for nothing, it would have been fun to watch him in preseason. We also had a much more notable injury on the offensive side of the ball, and that is center Cade Mays suffering was a fractured wrist, I think it was, and he is going to miss 8 to 10 weeks. So that was last week, so 7 to 9 more weeks. The Lions have a week 6 bye. He'll be back after the bye. Maybe he returns the game before, but expect that he won't make his Lions debut until week 7 versus the Packers. It's unfortunate because if not, like the Lions, they don't face the most daunting defensive lines in the first couple of weeks, but it would have been a great opportunity for this newer look offensive line to gel. And now Mays just is robbed of that time. And it's unfortunate, but next man up.
Yeah, it's a bummer for sure. I would have liked to see him get a full camp. I'm not sure if he would have played in any preseason games. We'll talk about starters potentially playing in preseason later on in the show, but at the very least, he would have gotten those camp snaps. And certainly, you go back to last year, you look at that first game against the Packers, and it was far from the only issue in that game, but it definitely felt like the offensive line didn't have a lot of cohesion in that first game. It was very clunky, and they had a new center in Glasgow was moving over. They were inserting a rookie in Tate Ratledge. Mahogany was in that game too, right? At left guard. I'm trying to remember if he started week 1, but yeah. So it was a new interior, and they just didn't look sharp yet. And that's definitely a risk here in losing Mays, is that you could end up in that kind of situation again. However, this is something that I talked about in the offseason episodes, but I was really happy about the way they had fortified offensive line depth in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
And last year we saw Glasgow go down, and we saw Kingsley Aguakon have to come in for that Christmas game. And oh
And what
boy,
was the
like
other guy? Tristan Colin in that Packers
Tristan
Thanksgiving
Colin,
game?
yeah, it was real bad. Like they couldn't play at all at the NFL level, especially in pass protection. And this is different because they go and they get you Scruggs, and we can talk about Scruggs versus McLaughlin, but I thought it was kind of weird that in some of the reactions to the Mays injury, it was like people forgot that Scruggs existed. Like I felt like I was the only person that remembered he was on the team because there was all this talk about McLaughlin, and I know Scruggs was banged up. He wasn't in practice. I get that, but like he's going to be the starting center. Like unless McLaughlin really put something incredible together, Scruggs is a guy who's played center for almost a full season in Houston and did it pretty well, and he's not that old. So that's a great option to have come in, and I think they should be okay. So I'm really happy about having him as a backup. This is why you need depth, and it should come in handy.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason that people are dismissive of Scruggs is because of his relatively mediocre play at guard. But at center, he's been good. And sometimes we see it like it could be a combination of things, right? First of all, the Houston offensive line, when Scruggs was there, was a joke. Second of all, like sometimes guys just don't play out of position. Sometimes it's just the right fits and the right system. Like Scruggs talked about how excited he was to play in Detroit because of the physicality that the Lions play with and the attitude and the culture that they've set. So I have no problem plugging Scruggs in. And again, like I said earlier, the Lions aren't playing a daunting lineup of defensive lines in the first month and a bit of the season. Like, yes, there are good teams in there, but they aren't world beaters. It's not playing against the Packers and Vikings, who you're going to be playing out of the bye, where it's okay. Then we kind of need our best guys. It's you got the Saints who are banged up that we'll talk about. You got the Bills who can't stop the run ever for the last like 4 years in in the Josh Allen era. Like it's teams like that where it's like, yeah, it sucks to not have Mays there, but they are going to be okay. And like you said, the depth is probably the best it's been Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the starting unit is not going to top the 2024 unit just because that was an unbelievable offense. Like that's probably the best Lions line we might see in many, many years. But the depth is probably as good as it's been in a long time as well.
Yeah, I mean they got somewhere between 8 and 9 guys that you feel reasonably okay about playing in a game. There's some questions now at left guard after the preseason game, but just getting backups like Larry Borum, like Ben Barch, like Chu Scruggs, those are serious players, guys that have started games before and have done decently well in some of those games. So uh, there's not a lot of great OL depth around the NFL. Like this is one of those things that we always talk about. Like teams are always cycling through guys. There's a very limited number of people who can play offensive line in the NFL and do it at a satisfactory level, and having enough of them to at least tide you through games when injuries happen, because injuries will. And I also think it's probably never want to say it's a good injury, but on the scale of injuries that could happen, I'm glad that it's just a broken broken wrist. Get it right. I don't know if they did surgery or not, but splint it up, cast it up, whatever, and then it will be okay. Like this is not a back issue, which I would be much more concerned about. It's not a Kirby Joseph chronic situation. It's just a clean break. They'll take care of it, and then he'll be back. And almost every team suffers some injuries in training camp. That's the worst part of August for any team. And having this so far being the worst thing is far from a worst case scenario. And I like that it's going to get McLaughlin some experience, even though I don't think he's going to be a contributor in the regular season. It's giving him some moments in the spotlight.
Yeah, exactly. And um, like I aside from that, like I don't really have any major concerns with the offensive line. I will say on Larry Borum quickly, Larry Borum might be the best third tackle in the league. Like honestly, like I know people, it's because he was signed before Miller had been drafted, and there was a little, oh, Larry Borum's going to be our starting right tackle. This is a disaster. What are we doing? All this, and now there's the third tackle. Everyone's just kind of like, oh yeah, Larry Borum exists, but like, guys, maybe not a starting level, but he's right on the cusp, and you
I
could
mean, he
argue
started
that
last year for Miami, didn't he? So,
yeah. So he's
and it's
right
not like
on the cusp.
Miami's any good, but yeah, like he's done it, and that's the most you can really ask for. And it's not like he's ancient either. Like
No.
that's the other nice thing is he's like roughly my age. So you've got some guys in their 20s to help fill in. One thing I'll say about McLaughlin, it does seem like there are positive signs with him in terms of the way he's being talked about. Like I think there's a rule that we have in college football where because the reporters don't get to see practice, everything filters through insiders, and so there's like kind of code speak you use. And one of the rules that I've used over the years is the if coaches and insiders are talking about you positively when there's really no reason to, as in you're not in the too deep or anything like that, that's a good sign. Like if a true freshman comes to college, he's third or fourth on the depth chart, but all the coaches are saying, who's doing really well? It's this guy. That usually means down the line he'll be a player. And I think with McLaughlin, like even before the Mays injury, like you're coming into camp, he's third center on the depth chart, and there was like talk about him.
Mhm.
And I know Dane Brugler, the Athletics NFL draft guy, has been a fan of his. And there's just been a lot of positive buzz about McLaughlin. When he's a UDFA, there's no real reason to be excited about him. But I think it suggests that potentially down the line he could be a backup interior lineman on a 53-man roster, and that's good for him. And we'll see how he continues to do.
In other injury news, some of the guys returning to practice over the last couple of days: Sione Vaki, Juice Scruggs, who we talked about, Malcolm Rodriguez, rookie Derek Moore is back at practice after missing about a week and a half with 2 weeks with that groin injury. DJ Reed is back at practice as well. Still no Isaiah Pacheco. Jacob Saylor's missing a couple days here with an ankle injury coming out of that preseason game. Robichaux has a broken foot. Tight end Jackson Meeks undisclosed. Peyton Turner still not practicing. Makai Wingo is in concussion protocol. Lawrence Strickland and Damone Clark are injured as well. Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch we should talk about because obviously we haven't had a show since the start. We did just before the start of camp or like at the start of camp. Seems like Brian Branch is still well ahead of schedule. Seems like he could return to practice before September, which would be absolutely fantastic. Like there's no other way to frame that. I was bracing for him not to be seen until like end of October, early November. We might get him back by mid-October, which would be fantastic. And it seems like Kirby is on a similar timeline where neither of these guys are playing week 1, but could we have them both back by the bye week? That seems to be within the realm of possibility here.
Yeah, I mean Branch for sure in the recovery timeline they've been talking about. Kirby, I still don't really know what to expect there. I operate on the Branch timeline simply because that's what Dan keeps saying every time he's asked about it. But it's been so touch and go, and it's hard to kind of put a timeline on something like that. So I think we're just in wait and see mode with Kirby Joseph. Um, I mean, my focus in camp has just been to see these other safeties. Like whatever happens with them will happen, but we need to see what the plan is until they're back. And I think there have been some positive signs with some of these safeties. So far from the worst place. And I will say with some of the reporting and just chatter about camp, when you have like 100 guys in training camp or whatever it is, the injury report always seems a lot worse than it actually is. Like you just read through all those names and you'd be like, oh my God, our whole team's
So many
hurt.
injuries.
And it's
How
it's
many of
like, yeah,
those guys are on the 53?
and again, it's like, oh, JMO missed practice today because he was a little banged up or whatever.
Yeah,
That
little
happens
shoulder
all the
injury.
time. Like it's fine. It's not, I mean, the worst one, honestly, is probably Robichaux, and he was never making the 53. So
No.
you know,
The thing to remember with all these camp injuries is the only time an NFL player is going to be at 100% is in the offseason. The second that training camp starts, and especially the second the pads go on, nobody is at 100% anymore. They are, especially the linemen and like offensive defensive linemen, where their entire job is every single day for 3 hours to smash into each other at full speed. Injuries are going to happen. They're going to get banged up, and that's why football is a very physically demanding game. But that's like these guys will battle through it. I'm like, there's no reason to be concerned except for guys like Mays or Kirby, where it's like, okay, you're going to miss regular season time. That's where it starts to be a bigger concern. But these individual like banged up, like Derek Moore missed a week. It's like, okay, yeah, he missed a week of development, but it's not that big of a deal.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's okay. We no need to panic.
Now, switching over to some of the more positive things, the camp battles and the preseason game a little bit, and the biggest story I think of, or one of the most uplifting stories of both training camp and the preseason game so far, is second year edge defender Ahmed Hassanin, who has just become an absolute camp darling. He is every beat reporter's man crush right now, everyone's fan favorite. He has been showing up in camp each and every day, had multiple sacks in that preseason game, had a little bit of an injury scare, but he was able to return to the game as well. It seems that shifting over from the rush end to the big end has worked wonders for him. He's put on a little bit more muscle, and he has been very disruptive so far.
Yeah, I mean, he had 2 sacks in that preseason game, and one of them, if I remember correctly, was against the first team offense. And then he had there was a forced fumble in there too, I think, on one
Strip
of those
sack, yeah.
sacks. Yep. So really productive game from him, and that just builds on top of what we've been hearing in camp. And look, this defensive end situation, we think it's maybe better than it has been at some points in the past after finally using a high pick on an edge rusher in Derek Moore, who we should note was hasn't been practicing much. He had an injury, although he's back now.
Just returned, yeah.
So we're waiting to hear more good things about him. But they beefed up the top line a little bit more at the edge rusher position, but it's still very shallow as a whole. Like you go down the list, it's not hard to see a path for Hassanin into the two deep. I mean, right now you're going to have Hutch, you're going to have Derek Moore, you're going to have DJ Wanham. After that, I don't know. I mean, Peyton Turner came in with injury questions and he's injured. So sounds like the questions have been answered, just not the way we wanted them to be. And beyond that, I mean, there's been a little Anthony Lucas buzz. There's been a little Tyree West here and there.
I was gonna say Tyler Lacey has been the one that's been
Yeah,
getting more of the buzz, where it seems like he's the one splitting the most time with Wanham on the first team, or was while Derek Moore was out. So it kind of seems like it's Hutch, Wanham, Moore, and then Lacey's the backup big end, and then Hassanine's kind of just moving around. And
I mean that's a very doable path for Hassanin to get on this roster and to be in a position to mix in some snaps during the year. And that's extra motivation for him to keep working. And I think with him, it's worth remembering that he's a newcomer to football on a relative
yeah,
basis, right? I mean, we know the whole story about coming over from Egypt and all that, but he was a guy that had a sort of a steeper development curve where it clicks later on, was really productive his last 2 years at Boise State. And I think there's probably more to unlock with him given his story than would usually be the case with was a sixth round pick. So I'm excited about Hassanin. This has been a really positive development, and I'm trying to temper expectations, but uh, he's shown out pretty well so far.
he's also just so fun. Like every time he does anything, he's screaming at doing this primal scream, and he's like he gets hurt and he's like punching the turf and he's like stomping at the grass as he runs off the field. Like he's just and there's the whole like every time he runs off the field to practice, he yells at Brad Holmes, "I love you!" Like, and it's just all these like kind of fun things. So that's been awesome to see. Again, we're at the point where we're 2 and a bit weeks into camp. There's not going to be a 53 man roster projection that I do that doesn't have Hassanin on the team at this point. We'll see how the rest of the line shakes out. Another young defensive lineman who has been fun and had some nice moments in the preseason game, Skylar Gill Howard, who had one of the most impressive pursuits of a scrambling quarterback I've seen in that preseason game on Josh Johnson, was it? Where he just man, that guy moves so well. We knew he would because he's a converted linebacker. He's a little bit smaller for a defensive lineman, but man, that guy is quick.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of the whole thing with his scouting report, right? It's like not the biggest guy, maybe not the best run defender, but a lot of giddy up, good first step, just quick, able to get after the quarterback, and that includes in space, I guess. So
Yeah.
it was definitely an eye-catching play for sure, one of the more memorable plays. And I think there's been a reasonable amount of buzz with him through practices so far. Nothing overwhelming, but another guy that seems probably like he's on pace to make the roster at this time. At least be close to it, right around that cut line. And for a late round pick, there's nothing wrong with that. So, uh, good showing from him for sure.
Yep. Some of the linebackers in that preseason game, like we talked about White, Eric Hunter is also just a fun little
Yeah,
guy that buzzes
he's gotten
around.
he's gotten some coverage for sure.
Yeah, Hunter's funny because like you could watch him, but he's almost more entertaining before the snap than during the play because he will sprint up to the line, then sprint back, then run over to the receiver, then run back, and he's just like doing all this motion before the snap. But he's just a little fly. He buzzes around everywhere. Uh, in the secondary, though, this is where things get very interesting in camp because the nickel position, we have no idea who's going to start, but it seems like it is down at this point to two guys. Christian Isian and rookie Keith Abney seem to be the two guys with the that are taking the lead in that race. Roger McCreary is doing a lot more work on the outside. Ennis Rakestraw continues to be the most inconsistent player in camp, like maybe on the roster. So corner's just a little bit of a weird one right now, and but we'll talk about outside in a minute. Just focusing on nickel for a second. How surprising is it to you that Roger McCreary has seemingly went from being the free agent guy that's going to be the nickel to not at all?
Really surprising, I would say. Like it to me, it seemed like he was going to be the odds-on favorite to be the nickel. I mean, he was a good enough player last year that he got traded from was it Tennessee
Tennessee to the
maybe?
Rams.
Yeah, to the Rams. Like it, if the Rams are getting you with the deadline, that's a good sign to me, generally speaking. And there seemed to be enough pedigree there to think, okay, this guy is going to be the starter in the nickel slot, and then it just didn't. It hasn't totally clicked for him a little bit, and now he's out at the outside. But like some of the early coverage from the beat reporters was not the most positive. Seemed like he got off to maybe a little bit of a slow start, and so that's a little surprising. But they need help on the outside too. So if they think he is better served there, that's fine with me. And they do have options at the nickel slot. Like coming in, I figured McCreary would be the favorite for it. But if you had told me, oh, Christian Isian wins it, I would have been like, okay, yeah, that's possible. And Keith Abney obviously is sort of a nickel corner by trade coming out of college. So they do have options there. It just would be nice to see a little more positive buzz for Roger McCreary, just because I thought he was going to be a real piece here, and there was a point where it seemed like he could be in jeopardy of even making the roster. Now maybe a little more short up, but something to follow for sure in that regard. And it doesn't there hasn't been much Rakestraw conversation at nickel. Like it sounds like he's been mostly outside.
It seems like he can do it in a pinch, and they like will experiment with him there and with the second team and whatnot. But for the most part, I think he's firmly an outside corner. And speaking of that, those outside guys, we know at this point DJ Reed's your one, Rock Yassin is your two. Is CB3 currently Nick Whiteside? Like, is that where we're at? Where Nick Whiteside is just CB3, and then Rakestraw and McCrory are 4 and 5?
Seems like a possibility. I mean, I will note that Rock Yassin becoming just a bolted on number two is also sort of a story of camp. Like we thought he was going to be given the first opportunity
Yeah, the
for it.
incumbent, essentially.
Right. But it was totally possible, I thought, coming in that someone could dislodge him or whatever. But he's become really just, solidified there. And I've got no issue with that. I thought he played pretty solidly last year as a whole. Um, and then the Nick Whiteside story has really been probably him going up and Rakestraw coming down has been the story of camp in the secondary as a whole. With Whiteside, I don't recall him playing a lot outside of the Legion of Boom game against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think he was a practice squatter for the most part. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I remember him in that game, and he was good in that game. And it was like,
oh,
wow, where did that guy,
unbelievable.
where did that guy come from? And then we never saw him again. And it
I think
was,
that just adds to the mythos of that game, though, where it's like all of these guys that's like, who are you? And how are you playing? And why was this the best our secondary has played in 3 years?
it was very mysterious. And the talk about him, I remember all offseason looking at this DB room and thinking like, I liked that one game of him. I would have liked to see more. So the idea that he could be having a really good camp and could be in line for some playing time isn't crazy. It seems like the read on him perhaps is that he's uh like he knows how to play corner basically, like very technically sound, but he was at Saginaw Valley State. Like we know the probable athletic limitations there. And you kind of saw that in the preseason game. He had the one notable play where he's getting beat over the top, and even though he's behind athletically, he just times it up perfectly, gets up there, bats the ball away. And there's a lot to be said for just knowing the technique of being able to play corner and being sharp in that regard. I mean, you want to talk about Terrion Arnold, he was perfectly fine athletically, but the technique stuff was always a little bit of an issue. Like just the handsiness, we've talked about that as being an issue with the Lions. So someone that may be giving something up as an athlete, but knows how to use his hands, knows how to jam, knows how to just bat the ball away when it comes. All that kind of stuff. Doesn't bite on double moves, that sort of thing. You can get pretty far from that. And I at this point it feels like Whiteside's a lock. Like I don't
Oh,
know how he's
yeah.
not on the 53 man.
Yeah. And the thing with him is like, I'm never going to trust him to go one on one with Jamar Chase, but I can absolutely trust him to just go out there and give you, you know what you're going to get from him. You're just going to get solid work. It's not going to be exceptional. It's not going to be horrible. But it's again, the thing we talked about with Terrion. He knows when to turn his head around. That's another huge thing. He knows how to get his hand on the football, and that is a real asset. He's also got legit size for corner. He's 6'1", 200, which if you're going to be a little bit less athletic, at least be big and physical and be able to slow these quicker, speedier guys down.
A school of chonky corners.
I mean, the Lions are the school of slow corners, so like DJ Reed is kind of the exception, but when it was like Cam Sutton and even like Terrion was hardly fast, and
Yeah, he wasn't a
it's like all
burner.
it's like the average speed is like a 4.640 on this the corner room, so that's is what it is. Like you're not like DJ Reed, I think is fairly fast, but he obviously got zapped by the hamstring last year.
Yeah, that was rough after the hamstring. It was definitely not back to 100%.
Yeah, so I think the theory is if you have guys like Whiteside and Rocky Scene in the secondary, it works so long as you have good safeties. And that's always kind of been the theory of the Lions defense. And speaking of those safeties, it seems like we're going to start the year with Avonte Maddox and Chuck Clark, with Thomas Harper rotating in as kind of the third safety, and then Izzy and is a versatile DB that'll be the starting nickel, but maybe you see him around. He's also kind of a safety by trade. It seems like if it's Maddox and Clark, Maddox more the over the top guy in the Kirby role, Clark more in the box in the branch role. I think you are fine with that.
Yeah, I don't hate it. It's obviously a
Don't
step.
love, but
You're right. It's obviously a step down from the we have a Pro Bowl and an All Pro safety, which was awfully nice there when it lasted. But this is the world we're in right now, and we're hoping those guys get back at some point. And you need something to tide you over. And I felt it was like offensive line. I felt in the offseason they did a really good job of just sort of proofing themselves for injuries. In this case, knowing there already were injuries. But like you look at Avonte Maddox, and I thought he played pretty solidly for the Lions last year. We talked about he ended the season really well. He had that good final game against the Bears with the interception, and a guy that over the course of his career has been very successful at points in the past. It got off track at some point, but this was a guy that was a key part of the Eagles' defense when they were really good for a period of time. And then you look at Chuck Clark, and Chuck Clark was a starter on some good Baltimore teams, including the one that was the number one seed, the Lamar Jackson MVP year in 2019, I think that was. So these are guys with some pedigree. They're also among the oldest players on the roster. I was looking the other day, and as a whole, this is a really young roster. There are very few players in their 30s, and I think Maddox, Rock Yassin, and Chuck Clark are like three of maybe five or six as a whole. So they bring a little bit of experience that this team is lacking otherwise, and I think that's good. And everything so far has suggested they should be okay at doing whatever is asked of them until injuries are resolved or are not.
yeah, and with some of these veteran guys like Rocky Scene, and we talked about Devin White earlier, and Maddox and Clark, sometimes it is just about fit. Like you see these guys bounce around. Like Rocky Scene, it was like 5 teams in 5 years, comes in and now looks like a staple of the Lions corner room. So sometimes for these veteran guys, if once you find the right fit, it you just something clicks and you kind of can capture some of your best moments again. Aside from that, is there anything, other notes on the defensive side of the ball that we want to touch on in terms of things that have happened so far?
Um, I think it's worth saying just in terms of the preseason game that it was I think a good showing defensively. Like the second half, it doesn't really matter that much because you're starting to rotate more and more and more guys who aren't relevant at all for the 53 man discussion. But in the first half, they played a fair number of guys who are definitely relevant, and they were playing two drives against the first team offense for Cincinnati, which I didn't expect to see that, but they did okay against that, and then going second team against second team with the Bengals backups. It was pretty good. Like you look at that first half, I think they held Cincy to it was like 3.7 yards per play or something like that. I mean, it was pretty sharp. Really, the only thing that that the Bengals were able to get was just picking on Ennis Rakestraw over and over and over and over again. And when they weren't doing that, they didn't have much. We talked about wanting to see just more cohesive, more put together preseason versus last year. And I thought, especially on the defensive side, it was a major step in that direction.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we do have to remember the preseason silliness, like the that fumble sequence where the Bengals snap the ball on the turf, the running back picks it up, fumbles, and then like 2 plays later, Luke Altmaier tries to hand it off to Jacob Sailors. He ends up tossing it off his chest and and onto the ground. Like the preseason, it was a wet and wild game in Cincy. It was going to be a bit of a slogfest. I know the Bengals starters also made you mad because you're like, if starters are going up against backups and you're dumping it off this much, jail time. Like this, but it was a perfectly fine showing from the guys that you wanted to see. On the offensive side of the ball, I guess we'll start with the offensive line because we had some more notable players playing in this game. Starting with the positives, Blake Miller, his first Lions action, and he looked pretty good in pass pro. He looked like a bit of a mauler in the run game, and overall, I like. It's weird to bring him up and say this, but I had no notes. He looked very steady. Like he's not Panay Sewell trucking over guys like a freight train, but he didn't have any major blemishes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm sort of an expert on the OL play in this game because I didn't rewatch it. I have better things to do than that, but I know Justin Rogers did, and some of the other beats and people looked more heavily into that. And there was, I think, Jeff Schwartz had a tweet on Blake Miller, among other analysts that took a look at it. And generally, the consensus across the board was he did pretty well. I think he had a grade somewhere in the 60s on PFF, which, yeah, sure. The one thing I did notice was some deeper rushes with him that were getting. Yeah, he was able to get a hand on them and kind of push them past the quarterback, but he was giving up a little bit of depth there. I think, given what we've heard in training camp with him going up against Aiden Hutchinson, there's going to be some pass pro wobbles, particularly against elite rushers. That's okay. He's a rookie. As long as he can hold up against the average lineman, and this is a guy that run blocking was talked about as one of the main points. If he's effective on the ground and he holds his own for the most part in pass pro, I think that's a successful first season. And the first preseason game, from what we know, seemed like it was in that vein. I think no real reason for pessimism.
Yeah, and I mean, we comped him to Taylor Decker coming out of the draft, where it's like, hey, when he goes up against the DJ Wanhams of the world, he's going to look pretty good. When he goes up against Micah Parsons, you might run into some problems, but who isn't going to run into problems against Micah Parsons, right? So it's like, it's not that big of a deal. The slightly bigger deal was the fact that we had two guys that were competing for the left guard spot playing to start this game. We had Christian Mahogany, who is the I guess presumed starter at left guard, and we had Miles Frazier who was chipping it at right guard in this game, and both guys had some real inconsistencies. Frazier especially had some really undisciplined moments in that game, and Mahogany, he was sort of okay. He held up fine against the Bengals starters and against Dexter Lawrence, but a couple of penalties, a couple of miscommunications. He was fine, but it wasn't inspiring play, at least from my takeaway. I know retroactively people were going back and Zapruder filming everything that happened and being like, Mahogany was actually fantastic, but I didn't see anything that was excellent. I just saw, that was fine.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a train wreck across the offensive line. It wasn't anything great either. There was some rush up the middle in particular, some stunts and things that didn't get picked up. But from the tackles, it looked a little more solid, and uh, as a whole, it was fine. The penalties with Miles Frazier in particular was probably the biggest negative for me on the offensive line. Mahogany, a little wobbly. McLaughlin, some good moments, some iffy moments, but like line play in the preseason is never that great. So I'm not like that freaked out. I think certainly this coming week you'd like to see just a cleaner performance from the OL, right? Just a little, even if it's not paving people, just preventing flags and just keeping the game moving along would be a plus.
Well, we should get at least some reps of the start of more starters, so hopefully that will take a step in the right direction to keeping. I don't imagine like Jared Goff might play a drive. I don't imagine Goff is going to play very much in this game, but it's going to help the backups, Josh Dobbs and Luke Altmaier, who we'll talk about now. I know we've mentioned him briefly throughout the show, but Luke Altmaier, for a UDFA rookie, He looked pretty good in this game. It was on the first drive. He was zipping like a beautiful pass to Cedric Wilson, and then Isaac Tesla forgot he had hands, which led to an interception. And but for the most part, Altmaier looked really solid. And again, it is such an improvement over what we were dealing with last year.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised at how solid Altmaier looked. Got the balls there in catchable positions. Got dinged with an interception that I don't think was really his fault. Maybe he threw it a little fast, but like it was a very catchable ball. It it went right through the wickets, off the face of Isaac Tisla, and then it's up in the air and it's picked off. That's not on him. The fumble and the snap. What I mean, it was raining. Like I don't know, not the
And like
most.
the interception at the end, it's like, oh, you have to. There's
Oh
20
yeah,
seconds
that
left. You
20.
like
That
it, like all three turnovers. I think like the fumble is the one I could maybe get on him for, but whatever.
Yeah, no. If I was charting this game, he would not get a negative on either interception. Got the balls there, looked pretty good. I mean, you could probably make a case he looked a little better than Josh Dobbs, but neither guy was bad in any particular way. And I think it was a positive statement from Altmaier. I still don't think he will make the roster because Dobbs just has more experience, and I'm really not a believer in carrying three quarterbacks, especially when you have a starter as good as Jared Goff. So I don't necessarily see a path there. But if he continues to play well in the preseason, it's possible. It's possible.
I'm starting to trend towards. I think they might at least consider keeping three. Like coming into camp, it was like, yeah, they're not keeping three. But now I think Altmaier is at least forcing that conversation a little bit. And he did have the advantage of Bridgewater retiring and being out of practice beforehand. So he kind of just got like a week where he was getting all the work with the twos and threes. So for a UDFA rookie, it's very advantageous for him to just get as many snaps as possible. He got 3/4 of work in that first preseason game. I imagine he'll get at least a half's worth of work in the game in both of the upcoming games as well. So we'll see how he does. But I also thought his best throw of the day was unfortunately negated by Tariq Black pushing off of the DB, which but it was a great ball downfield, and those two linked up on the Lions' lone touchdown of the day as well. Altmaier had the 2-point conversion. Like I think the biggest thing, it was almost jarring to an extent, is Altmaier and Dobbs could not be more different in their play styles. Like Altmaier is a little bit closer to Goff in the way that he kind of tries to work through his progressions and just take what's available to him, whereas Dobbs is constantly hopping around and almost looks antsy to try to get out and scramble and run around. So watching those two back to back is a little jarring, but I thought Altmaier did everything he needed to do, and he was distributing the ball well. Um, the other, I guess, real positive from this game, Jacob Sailors looked fantastic as a running back. And I know I have been a Jacob Sailors naysayer on this show, mainly for his special teams play, but as a running back, that was absolutely fantastic for preseason work. And him and Blackshear, I thought both did really well in that one.
Yeah, Sailors ran hard, looked good. Certainly seems to have running back four in his hands. Like I don't really see him not winning that job at the moment. We're still waiting on Sione Vaki to get back. He did suffer a broken nose, which
Yeah, impressive.
I
It's hard to
don't
do
even
that.
I don't even know how that happens.
Well,
Like,
I was also confusing because it was like, oh, Sione Vaki left practice after being poked in the eye. What an eye poke if it broke his nose.
well, right. I
Unbelievable.
mean, you see eye pokes all, pretty commonly because you have that little area around your eyes where hands can get in, but like can a full fist get in there? I mean, these are big dudes. How are they fitting a fist
Yeah, how
inside the
strong are your
helmet?
fingers? Like,
And then I don't know. I was like, can he wear like a Rip Hamilton mask like under the helmet? Like
yeah, I don't know
I
how that would
not
work.
I have no experience dealing with broken noses in football. So
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not like
whatever.
hockey where it's like you put on the bubble. It's like you're already
Right,
wearing the
right.
cage. Like, what do you do? Wear a
So
visor.
yeah, whatever is yeah, Ladainian Tomlinson style. Whatever the situation is with him, he'll get back and he will be one of the running backs on the roster if for no other reason than the special teams related stuff. But there's another spot there for Sailors, and it seems like it's his at the moment. So, uh, good impression from him. Less good day from the wide receivers, and that was mostly driven by the Tesla situation.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I don't have a ton of other comments or notes.
It seems like Tesla's had a bit of a weird camp. I know there was the big highlight of him on Sunday here yesterday for us going around where he's going up over two guys and mossing them. It's like, okay, that's good. But just really seems to struggle with press and kind of any physicality from DBs at the line. Like, obviously, we know his unbelievable ability to go up and high point the ball, but he really just is still like he's still learning the position. And I think I definitely forget that a little bit because he was so electric in the limited action he got last year, where it's like, oh yeah, this is a guy that very much is not a finished product, and he is kind of just a ball of clay still.
Yeah, I mean the part that was a little frustrating, I thought, from the preseason game is some of the drops, like with that interception, just because Tisla's one thing in going hand in hand with his contested catch ability is just that he catches the ball
Yeah.
when he's open and he gets his hands on it, he brings it in. And so you have a couple drops in that game, and you're kind of like, well, if he's not doing that, we're in big trouble here because what other skills does he have at that point? And it seems like he doesn't have JMO speed to get open that way, and he's still working through like the route running and that kind of stuff. So he needs to be able to catch balls when he gets the opportunity. Now, seeing that clip in practice, still a good sign. Like still that he has that in his pocket, but he's going to need to find ways to be more consistent because Greg Dortch quietly is a very viable player, like a very solid player, certainly capable of being wide receiver three if you need him to be. And I think right now he probably is. Like I from what we've heard, Tesla has not been performing well enough to earn that spot, and he's going to have to dig in here and have a couple better preseason performances.
I think one thing I think we might have undersold how involved Greg Dortch is going to be in this offense, just because I think there was a bit of a projection going into camp where it's like, oh yeah, Tesla is going to take a step and really solidify himself as the three. That hadn't happened. Yeah, Greg Dortch is going to be on the field, and I think we're going to see like he's very familiar with Petzing. He obviously is the punt returner. Dortch is going to be on the field a decent amount, like about as much as we saw Khalif Raymond last year. So just brace yourself for that if that's not what you want to hear, if you're a big Tesla supporter. But Dortch is going to be very involved. The other guys, I mean, Dominic Lovett existed. I was happy to see him on kick returns, and he didn't get to return a single kick because they just kept kicking it to, I think it was Blackshear on the other side. So that was, I want to see Lovett get a chance as a kick returner, but his hands looked perfectly somewhat fine. I think he had one drop that was like, but it was somewhat contested. Aside from that, there wasn't a whole lot. I guess aside from that, is there anything from the preseason game that you want to talk about offensively there?
Um, not really. Like I just the only I guess on special teams, Bates made his kicks. The only thing I didn't like was
And a
him.
tackle.
Yeah, was that I did not like him having to do that. We talked last year about how the returns were a foreshadowing of sorts of some of the issues they would weirdly have on special teams in the regular season. Just looked a little disjointed last preseason, and so just for me, it was good as a whole, but just that one, I want to see crisp stuff on special teams, like no long returns, nothing to kind of scare me in that way. So mostly positive as a whole on that game. Like I came away pretty happy as a whole, but still a little bit of work to be done in tightening some things up.
And as we look forward to this game on Saturday against the Commanders, obviously, like we've mentioned throughout, the starters, or at least some starters, are going to play in this game. I don't imagine you would see some of the superstars. Like, I don't think you would see like Hutch or Sewell. I don't think you would see Amon Ra. but you might see like you should see like a DJ Wanham, Derek Moore will probably be your two starting edge guys in this one. You might see Tyleek on defense, like start. You probably will see Derek Barnes, like some of those like B level starters, like not the stars, but you'll some of the other guys just to mix in there and get some reps. I think that is one thing that Campbell, like with no joint practices this year, the Lions are really focusing on internal competition. You still got to get the starters some reps because a big selling point of those joint practices is it's a great opportunity for the starters to get work against other starters around the league and just give them extra reps to ramp up before the season starts. So, in lieu of that, give them a couple drives in the preseason to just get into the flow of going through the game action, and kind of get back into a rhythm. And we'll see what we see. One thing we did not mention is Jahmyr Gibbs is back with the team after signing a monster contract extension. Still no Isaiah Pacheco though, so I expect Sione Vaki will probably be the starting running back on Saturday, and I'm excited to see what he can do. But what are some of the things that you're looking forward to the most in this game?
Well, it definitely became more intriguing once I heard that some starters will be playing. Like that's first time in several years that that's been the case.
Might be the
Um,
first time in the Campbell era.
yeah, could
I
be. I don't have an issue with that, by the way. Like I saw some conversation and negativity about that decision. I get why, but I've said this for a long time, and it's falling on deaf ears to some degree with what's happened the last few seasons. But I really do believe that you can't coach football living constantly in fear of injury. Like you have to still coach the game. Like you can't just be, oh my God, if we do anything wrong, it'll be the end of this guy's career. Like it's still a contact sport. It's still a physical sport, and letting your starters play a little bit is I don't know how much more risky it is than anything that could happen in practice or anything that could happen anywhere or in the gym or whatever. Like
Yeah, I mean, what the other thing, we're not asking for them to be the Arizona Cardinals and give Jeremiah Love 15 touches in his first
right.
preseason action. Like, we're not asking them to be stupid. We're just asking, like, it's just, yeah, let the starters go through the motions a little bit.
Yeah, a drive or two. I mean, we saw the Bengals do it last week. Like
Yeah,
it, and
I
they seem to get through it fine. Like it's not the end of the world. um
I think there's just like a kind of recurring PTSD with this because in 2024 when the Lions were like, or it was the year that Laporta like hurt his knee in a meaningless game at the end of the season. It's like, why did you start the starters? Like, this was a terrible idea. And it's like, okay, he's like, relax, like things happen, it's football.
yeah, like we don't even know how in the world Cade Mays broke his wrist. Like I never still ever heard any
I saw
explanation.
speculation. That's all I saw.
Like
I only saw
yeah,
speculation that it was a chop move, and it was like, okay, I believe it. And if that happens, that is a normal defensive line, offensive line interaction that happens 45 times a practice.
yeah, and I don't think that like in preseason we're gonna expect like I'm trying to think of who is a good example because I doubt Amon Ra will play, but like I don't see the other team suiting up Vontez Perfect, like coming to take someone's head off. Like preseason games are physical, but they're not like that
Yeah.
degree.
Well, and that's why they don't do division games in preseason, because that's
Right.
what would happen. Is the second if the Lions and Packers played in the preseason, I would sign Vontez Perfect for that one reason. Just go find Jordan Love and take his head off, and then we'll have fun in the regular season. But that's not how things work. It's football. Everyone and like both teams are trying to do the same thing. Both teams are just trying to get ready for the season. It's not that serious.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that in mind, whichever starters play, I will be interested in watching them. I mean, again, like the rookies are probably worth watching the most. So Derek Moore, if he's playing, Blake Miller again, Keith Abney. I mean, Ahmad Hassanin is basically a rookie considering he didn't play in the regular
Yeah,
season last
the
year.
young
Like,
guys.
right, Skylar Gill Howard, all the dudes we've talked about are definitely going to be guys on my radar. Whiteside again, since we talked about him, Ken Rakestraw and Tesla get back on track. Those are all stories. Altmaier versus Dobbs battle. There's really nothing at tight end that's worth discussing. Like,
No, it's Laporta, it's Wright, it's Conklin. The end.
yep, pretty much. So I don't have anything there. Whichever of the guards play, if they can be a little cleaner on offense, less penalties, that kind of thing. Um, that's about all I have.
Yeah, and like I hope Ben Barch is able to suit up in that game. I hope Juice Scruggs can play a couple of snaps in that game. I know Scruggs is on a pitch count right now, working his way back into practice action, but and Ben Barch has just been injured all camp, which it's just unfortunate because he's supposed to be competing for the left guard spot and he hasn't really gotten a fair shot to because he can't stay on the field. But the best ability is availability, so that is also a factor. But yeah, like that's what we're kind of looking forward to in preseason week 2. And aside from that, is there anything else you want to mention before we wrap here?
I mean, did you have a take on the Gibbs extension? Like I didn't look too closely into the particulars of the deal or anything.
I can bring those up. I know going into the whole contract shenanigans, it was just like just get it done. Like what are we waiting for? And then it was Bijan got done and it was like, okay, now really get it done. Like I'm sick of this. But the way the contract is structured, this year his cap hit is going to be 8.67 million. Next year it'll be 6.2, which is going to be under 2% of the cap. In 2028 it jumps to 15.5, and then 2029 it jumps up to 27 million, which realistically means that he's got the next 3 seasons. And then if he's going to be a Lion in 2029, they're going to make a new deal and rework and move around some of that money because you're not going to have him play for $27 million in 2029 unless either A, the team is bad, or B, like the cap has gone up so much that you don't really care. But I do think it is worth mentioning that the way the Lions have constructed most of their contracts, it really seems to be built around the next 3 years, and then 2029 when that comes up, that's going to be a year to kind of rework a lot of these deals and be like, okay, like reevaluate, see where we're at. But I saw a lot of people talking about, oh, this means that like goodbye Brian Branch, goodbye Sam Laporta. Nope, they'll be back. They're going to get their deals too. It just means no free agents. But even in a world where the Lions couldn't afford those contracts right now, you can, I think Goff's contract, you can defer some of that money and free up 28 million if you restructure his contract for 2027. So there's your money to get all these extensions done, and that's what the Lions will do because that's the way the Lions have built this from the ground up.
With the note being that obviously Branch and Laporta's health will play large
Yes,
roles
that'll be a bigger
in
deal than the money.
yeah. So that's basically why they haven't been extended so far. I didn't have a major take on Gibbs' deal otherwise. Like the NFL, you're just mostly playing market rate for guys. Like it's not hockey where you're just trying to con your players into signing some stupid deal that frees up money at a later date. Like it's just pretty much you either pay them what the market says or they go somewhere else, and that's pretty much all it is. Everyone's trying to maximize their earnings because careers are so short. So you either think he's a top running back and then you pay him, or you don't. And I think everyone pretty much agrees that he is a top running back. So
The Lions actually might think higher of him than the fans do because Dan Campbell was like, "We're gonna push him. Like we haven't pushed him enough yet. It's like this is when he's gonna be unleashed." It's like okay, if there's another gear to go, then that'd be incredible. But assuming Gibbs plays a majority of the games over the course of this contract, he is very quickly going to wind up, at least in the record books, as the second best running back in franchise history.
yeah, he's had an incredible start to his career, and it's hard to really argue um, against keeping him like that.
Yeah. Oh
It's
no.
we can have a broad debate about the paths of building a team and whether it's a good idea to solely focus on sort of internal development and extending rather than looking for free agents. But this is the path they've chosen, and in this individual case, it was pretty much a no-brainer to me.
Also, like the Lions have been focusing so much on these draft classes, obviously. Guess what, guys? There's not really anyone from the 24 class that we're too eager to extend. So, if you want free agency, I think that's when give it a year, and I think then we'll be talking about free agent acquisitions a little bit more because the Lions had What a weird path. They went from like three straight generational drafts to a draft that we just do not talk about under any circumstances.
It will never not be funny that the Lions finally host the NFL draft, and the one that they host is the one that they just face plant.
Host
Like
a
you just,
draft and draft for need and make everyone happy by picking the positions that everyone wants them to take. And it goes so horribly.
and like in weird ways too, because I think we'll look back on this, and unless there is a big turnaround for Ennis Rakestraw, like we'll always wonder what would have been if he had not gotten injured when he was going to start really early in his career. And Terry on, I guess we'll see if Seattle
Noted
can
Seattle
fix him.
Seahawk, yeah.
Yeah.
That's that signing, by the way, was so hilarious because like, yeah, Terran will report to Seattle after it just goes down to Tampa to get a range first. He just has to go
Yeah,
take
he
care
has
of
to
that.
he has to take the ankle monitor off. The funny part about that was the tweets of like, oh my God, like Seattle Seahawks secondary next year, Devon Witherspoon and Terrion Arnold. This is unfair. And it's like,
Yeah, for
okay.
Seattle. The Rams just you know who the biggest winners of that signing were? The Rams. I think the Rams Super Bowl odds should go up after that.
I mean, it's like, okay, Devon Witherspoon and Cam Sutton. What a great combo. I mean, like, yeah, if Devon Witherspoon makes it a great combo, then sure. I, but with him in general, like, we'll see what happens in his time there. But people will look back and wonder if he had stayed out of trouble, could there have been a third year improvement? And at least the Giovanni Manu situation, we got to see through it. But that part of that story is you have two draft for need guys at the start, and then a couple of heat checks in Manu
Yeah.
and Sione Vaki, and Brad pulled up from 35 feet and might airballed him.
Yeah, that's I mean, Brad earned those heat checks. To be fair, like, yeah, full respect. You want to go for it, and you're feeling yourself. But I think that was just symptomatic of the Lions organization as a whole around that time, where they kind of all were just like, yeah, we got this. We figured this whole roster construction thing out, and they've been humbled a little bit. And I mean, we'll see what happens with the 25 class. It seems like Tyleek and Ratledge at very least are going to be starting level players, and obviously we'll see about the this year's class as well. But yeah, it's just an unfortunate reality that sometimes you have bad drafts.
Yeah, and it's even if you incorporate the 24 draft on any metric, the Lions are going to come out as one of the most successful
Oh yeah.
drafting teams over the period of the first four drafts of Brad Holmes' tenure. So, to some degree, it's kind of reversion to the mean, I guess you could say. Like, right, it's like if baseball, if a batter is 8 for his last 10, then like you shouldn't be surprised if he goes 0 for 4 in the next game. But at the same time, it is not hard to wonder like if things are just a little bit different, right? Like, what if the Lions get was it Quinyon
Cooper
Mitchell that
DeJean,
was in?
or
Yeah,
yeah,
either of
Mitchell,
those.
or
I mean,
one
Mitchell
of
went
those two.
before they were going to pick, but it was in that same class of DBs. Like
Yeah.
that was the last pieces that you kind of needed to push you over the top.
Yeah, but I mean, these what ifs play out like all the time. Where what if Seattle doesn't take Witherspoon fifth overall,
Right.
and the Lions take him sixth that year instead of trading down for Gibbs and Laporta?
Yep.
Like, how different does the team look there? Like, is DeAndre Swift still around? Like, is that what, like, how different does this offense look? And I know some people are frustrated because the Lions, like, defense has been kind of mid for a very long time. It, it's not, it's kind of just the reality that a lot of the superstars they drafted just happen to be on the offensive side of the ball. Like, I know you have Hutchinson, you have McNeil, but like you got your Sewell, you got Gibbs, you got Amon-Ra, J-Mo, like all these Laporta, all these guys where it's like, yeah, we just happen to have an insane hit rate on offensive starters. Oh
Yeah.
well.
I mean, it these last two classes are going to tell us a little more on Brad's drafting ability, but he earned the right to mess up. Unfortunately,
Oh
that's
yeah.
kind of the best way to put it. And as long as he gets back to at least putting starters on the field in these subsequent drafts, then you'll be in an okay spot.
Exactly. And again, like with where the Lions were drafting, like you can't be expecting superstars out of all those picks. I mean, if one of these guys turns into a superstar, I'm certainly not going to complain about it. But like, yeah, I think it's hard to quantify just how incredible those first few classes were with the volume of legitimate stars that they crafted. That I think the expectations just got a little too out of hand. But it is what it is. The Lions are still one of the best rosters in all of football, and they are set up for success here. So I think that's going to do it for this episode. We'll check in at some point. I don't know, maybe not before preseason week 3, but definitely before we get to cut down day and all that. And then we'll just check in and kind of recap the preseason, recap where we're at, and start to look forward towards the regular season a little bit more. But that is going to do it. So if you made it this far, be sure to hit like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Be sure to hit follow and leave us a review if you're on a podcasting platform. You can follow the show on Twitter at Payne and Drain. You can find me at ZachPayne41, Alex at Alex_Drain. And until next time, guys, take care, everyone. Cheers.